AI running hospitals, fridges that reorder your groceries for you, young people getting lost in digital worlds while sitting down to dinner, and threats from space none of us can stop. The Simpsons warned us that 2026 will change everything. In The Simpsons Season 37, Episode 11, Para-Hormonal Activity, we see the family in the near future, a few years older, dealing with all the chaos that comes with age and new technology. People were talking about this one recently because Maggie finally talks in the episode, but one of the most interesting and surprisingly realistic parts is the futuristic refrigerator. Homer buys a new smart fridge that automatically orders groceries whenever the house runs low. At first it seems like a dream come true, no more forgotten milk or empty snack cabinets, but then Bart hacks into it to watch adult content. The joke is classic Simpsons, but it's also oddly believable. Over the next few years, fridges and other household devices are gonna be way smarter. I could see fridges that track inventory, suggest meals, maybe even reorder stuff online. Are there fridges that already do that? You'll have to let me know in the comments. But with any kind of smart device, there are downsides, like hacking, which the episode also touches on. Also, in Para-Hormonal Activity, which again takes place in the near future, Marge is dealing with premenopause, showing all the hot flashes, irritability, and lifestyle changes that come with it. The episode actually leans into something you don't really see a lot on TV, the normalizing of hormone treatments and discussions around menopause. I can't say that it gets brought up a lot, let alone in cartoons. So Marge ends up using estrogen cream to handle her symptoms. Then Homer accidentally takes it and experiences some comedic side effects. It's exaggerated for laughs, obviously, but it does reflect a real-world trend. By 2026, more people will be openly talking about hormone therapy, and treatments like creams, patches, or medications could become even more common in everyday life. I mean, this is already happening. Look at how many dudes are hopping on testosterone replacement therapy, for example, even when they really shouldn't be. This kind of thing is way more normalized now, and that's a good thing in some instances. In others, maybe not so much. Point is, the episode reflects this shift in how society is treating aging and bodily changes. And over the next few years, this stuff is probably going to become even more common and mainstream than it is today. The episode Bart to the Future gets brought up a ton when talking about Simpsons eerily predicting the future, mainly because of this line.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump. How bad is it, Secretary Van Houten?
For all four of you who haven't seen this episode, it takes place in the future. Lisa grows up to be the, quote, first straight female president. Now, seeing as Bart to the Future aired in 2000 and takes place 30 years into the future, that would put it in the year 2030, a year after Trump's current term in real life will end. That's pretty eerie. Now, obviously, Lisa Simpson isn't going to be president, but it is possible the United States will be in deep debt by the time 2030 rolls around. There's a very good chance. I mean, you probably don't need me to tell you that things are pretty insane right now. This next one comes from Season 16, Episode 19, where Homer basically has a full-on meltdown after watching a movie at the theater and becomes convinced that the rapture is coming. From there, he starts spotting signs everywhere. He does a bunch of homemade numerology and confidently tells the entire town the world is ending in 1 week. After Homer says stars will fall from the sky, and that a blimp accident knocks a bunch of celebrities to the ground, technically stars falling, Springfield instantly treats it like confirmation. Because this is a silly cartoon, everyone buys into the doomsday idea and starts preparing for the worst. The thing is, this doesn't just happen in cartoons. As we've seen time and time again, people do buy into baseless doomsday predictions. You remember this past summer when TikTok had that massive doomsday trend where people were selling their homes and cars, quitting their jobs, posting these embarrassing videos smugly talking about how great it was, the end times were coming. Yeah, this is probably not gonna get any better. It's so easy for misinformation to spread these days. Unfortunately, I see more doomsday panic in the coming years. In the episode The Cartridge Family, all the way back in Season 9 from 1997, the episode opens with the family watching an ad for a big soccer game that's being held in Springfield, a match between Mexico and Portugal, the winner of which will determine the best in the world. It's basically the Simpsons equivalent of the World Cup final. Well, the next FIFA World Cup is going to be hosted across North America. One of the main host countries is Mexico. For Mexico to make it all the way to the final, especially playing on home turf, that would be one of the most unbelievable history-making runs in sports. And the fact that the show paired them with Portugal, another country that's never actually made it to the final, makes this one less likely to happen, but not impossible. I'll be keeping a lookout. Now for a really fun topic, corporate media mergers. This prediction comes from the season 6 episode Lisa's Wedding, which is also famous for its flash forward to the year 2010. Of course, 2010 has come and gone, but the underlying concept is still highly relevant in the current day. In one scene, we see a news ticker running across the bottom of the screen. It announces the networks have merged into one ridiculous behemoth entity named CNN-BCBS, a mashup of CNN, NBC, and CBS. Now, while we haven't seen that exact triple merger happen yet, the show was perfectly predicting the trend of media consolidation, where giant companies just keep buying up smaller competitors until only a few massive organizations control all the news and entertainment. Think about what's happening in the last few years alone. Disney owns, everything, right? Like every franchise is Disney now. There are constant rumors about what Amazon or Apple might buy next. The industry is under huge pressure from streaming, and when companies get desperate to survive, they merge. It would be shocking, but it wouldn't be impossible for the major news players to combine in order to stay profitable, especially because so many people get their news from podcasts now. By 2026, we could absolutely see an announcement for a new giant network with some equally awkward name. And this last prediction is probably the biggest anxiety driver for people right now: automation and robots stealing all the jobs. The best episode to look at for this is probably Them Robot from season 23. Mr. Burns is cutting costs, and Smithers calls all the power plant employees into a meeting. What's the big announcement? Smithers proudly unveils a whole army of advanced AI robots. He then tells the human employees, and this is the direct quote from the episode, "You will train them and they will replace you." That's the whole plan. To make it even better, those robots were voiced by Brent Spiner, who famously played the android Data on Star Trek. It was goofy, classic Simpsons stuff, but look at what's happening now with generative AI and automation. It's not a full robot uprising like the Terminator movies, at least not yet, but people are definitely being replaced in the workforce. By 2026, we're going to see AI and robotics move far past the typical factory line jobs. We're already seeing it take over roles in creative fields, customer service, etc. By 2026, many people who are training an AI system today are probably going to realize they just trained their own replacement. From season 27, we have an episode called The Margian Chronicles. The setup is classic Simpsons. It starts with something really simple and then spirals into something you were never expecting. So Homer steals eggs from Ned Flanders, and it ends up with the whole family signing up for a one-way mission to colonize Mars. The company behind it is called Exploration Incorporated, very similar to SpaceX or Mars One. In the episode, they originally announced that they want to have a colony established on Mars by the year 2026. But when the guys running the project, Paul and Barry, find out that a rival company is about to beat them to it, they announce they aren't waiting for 2026 anymore. They're gonna move the launch up to that coming Thursday. That rushed space race energy is exactly what we're seeing in the real world right now. We've got all these companies competing to be the first to reach specific milestones. The Simpsons predicted that private companies would get so competitive over Mars, they'd start making wild promises and changing their timelines. Now, whether we actually launch humans next year or it turns out to be a lot of corporate posturing like it was for Paul and Barry, that's another question. Plastic World is the third segment in the latest Treehouse of Horror episode that just aired a couple months back. The title, Plastic World, is of course a nod to the 1995 movie Waterworld, but the rest of the episode is mostly a parody of the Mad Max franchise. Instead of the world being flooded or gasoline shortages turning the planet into a violent wasteland, here the whole world has basically become a giant landfill. Lisa's walking around by herself because the rest of the family was wiped out in a plastic avalanche, and the only hope anyone has is digging deep enough to find actual dirt to grow food. She ends up finding the Quickie Mart buried under mounds of plastic, but loaded with perfectly preserved frozen food. And the second there's food on the table, factions start fighting over it. Bart shows up, turns out he is alive, and is now in charge of a roaming band of marauders. Well, you know what I'm gonna say. The world is definitely producing the most plastic it ever has. Projections from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and the UN Environment Program are saying companies are on a path to at least double that by the late 2030s. Most of this plastic doesn't get recycled, it just piles up in landfills or breaks down into microplastics that are now showing up in the water, soil, snow, our bodies. So when the episode shows Homer and Marge and a bunch of other characters mutating into plastic versions of themselves, of course it's exaggerated, but it's not totally outlandish. Plastic is in a way becoming part of us. Not to mention, have you seen celebrities' faces these days? Treehouse of Horror presents Simpsons' Wicked This Way Comes. It's the 7th episode of season 36. Features 3 segments, all tributes to Ray Bradbury stories. The third story drops us into a future where Springfield has gone fully dystopian. But not in the robots taking over kind of way, it's a lot more insidious. The government here controls people by banning anything lowbrow, so no dumb TV, no junk entertainment. Homer works on a squad led by a man named Siegfried Blaze. Their whole job is burning old videotapes of cheap TV shows. At home, the only shows allowed are these dry prestige dramas, which of course Homer hates every second of. When Homer raids the old Springfield Elementary and finds Willie secretly watching a beat-up America's Funniest Home videotape, Homer can't help himself. He watches it, laughs, suddenly remembers what actual fun feels like. Willie gives him the tape before getting hauled off, and Homer starts sneaking off the attic to watch it in secret. But Bart snitches on him. Blaze confronts Homer and ends up revealing that in order to keep people distracted, they push high-end quality content so nobody notices how awful the world around them has become. It's a total inverse of what we're seeing in the real world. Every platform seems to be headed in the opposite direction. TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. It's all full of this low-effort trends, rage bait, AI, but just like the Simpsons episode, it's all meant to keep people scrolling. And with AI-generated videos getting pushed harder every year, 2026 could easily be a world where entertainment gets so optimized for watch time that genuine creativity just gets buried. But the main point is controlling the population through content, keeping them distracted, depressed, and unfulfilled. That's already happening.
In 1884, Pope Leo XIII supposedly had a terrifying vision right after finishing Mass. According to accounts, he suddenly froze, turned pale, and stared off into nothing for several minutes. When he finally snapped out of it, he rushed to his office and wrote a prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel, one that sounded more like an exorcism than a normal Catholic prayer. The story goes that he overheard a conversation between God and Satan. In it, Satan told God he could destroy the church if he had enough time and power. God gave him 100 years to try. No exact date is given, but people have connected this to all kinds of things. The rise of communism, the 2 world wars, the SA scandals, the decline in church attendance. Some believe the full details of Leo's vision, including dates, warnings, and signs, were written down and hidden in the Vatican archives. A lot of people think the Vatican's secret archives are just a dusty vault full of old scrolls and letters, but there is a theory that the church has been secretly building something much bigger, something like a global catastrophe archive. Not just religious writings and ancient prophecies, but modern documents too, classified government reports, scientific risk assessments, and files from intelligence agencies. Earthquakes, pandemics, nuclear threats, solar flares, any scenario that could end civilization. The idea is that the Vatican isn't just hoarding religious knowledge, but collecting potential doomsday scenarios from every corner of the world and locking them away. But why would they do that? Well, maybe it's to prepare for the worst, maybe about controlling, knowing what's coming before the rest of the world does. There are also rumors that this section includes predictions of disasters that haven't happened yet. Not just very vague prophecies, but actual detailed breakdowns of possible extinction level threats. Sounds insane? Sure, but if any group had the reach, time, and secrecy to build an archive like that, it would definitely be the Vatican. Father Pellegrino Ernetti wasn't your average priest. He was a Benedictine monk, an exorcist, and a respected scholar. But he also claimed something that sounded insane, that he helped build a machine that could see through time. He called it the chronovisor. According to Ernetti, the device could tune into energy traces from the past, basically allowing you to watch history as it happened. He claimed to have seen lost plays from ancient Rome, and of course, the crucifixion of Jesus. He wasn't working alone. He said scientists like Enrico Fermi and Werner von Braun helped build it. The story goes that once the Vatican realized what the chronovisor could do, it was taken and locked away. Interesting. Some believe the machine still exists, hidden deep in the Vatican archives. Others think this whole story is just like a ridiculous conspiracy theory with little to no historical accuracy, but let's just imagine Ernetti was telling the truth. If there's even a slim chance this story is true, the church may be sitting on an incredible piece of technology. If the chronovisor was real and you had your hands on it, what would you look at first? Let me know. I really want to know, okay? There's a theory that deep inside the Vatican archives is a collection of books the church didn't just disagree with, they were actually scared of them. A hidden section full of banned books, stuff that goes directly against church teachings. That includes old Gnostic gospels, ancient pagan writings, and stuff like ancient texts that claim Jesus wasn't divine or that he had children. There's also talk of banned books by scientists, philosophers, and historians who went against church teachings or exposed uncomfortable truths. And of course, they're said to be writing on the other end of the spectrum, books with detailed instructions on dark rituals and ancient magic. For years, there have been stories about how the Vatican knows more about extraterrestrial life than it lets on. Not just speculation, but actual contact, recordings, and ancient texts centering around aliens. The Vatican owns one of the most advanced observatories in the world on a mountaintop in Arizona. It's run by Jesuit astronomers. That alone raises some suspicion, at least. But some think that buried in the archives are ancient documents describing extraterrestrial beings and encounters with them that predate modern UFO sightings by hundreds, if not thousands, of years. Some say the church has already prepared a response for when alien life becomes public, a plan to reframe the discovery as part of God's creation, not a threat to it. Another big part of this conspiracy is that the Vatican's been quietly given info by governments about UFOs and contact with aliens and just has stayed quiet about it. One prediction has nothing to do with fire from the sky or some world-ending disaster. The Great Apostasy is the idea that the collapse of the church won't come from outside forces, but from within. That leaders will stop believing but keep performing the rituals like actors in a play, and that eventually traditions will start to fade away until they're just a thing of the past. Some believe early church figures saw this coming, that letters and warnings were written and hidden away, documents saying that in the final days the church would still exist on the surface, but that spirituality would become an empty shell. Some have pointed to modern scandals, political distractions, and a growing sense that something is just off, that the foundation is still there, but the spirit is gone. If those archived warnings exist, they've stayed buried for a reason. In the 1100s, an Irish bishop named Saint Malachi claimed he had a vision of every pope who would ever lead the Catholic Church. He wrote down 112 short phrases, each one describing a future pope. For centuries, people have tried to match the descriptions to real-life popes, and a lot of them line up a little too well. One was born during a solar eclipse, just like the prophecy said. Another had sun-related phrases tied to both his birth and his funeral. The list ends with one final pope, Peter the Roman. According to the prophecy, he shows up during a time of extreme turmoil, leads the church through its final moments, and then Rome is destroyed. Judgment Day follows. Pope Francis is widely considered to be number 111. That would make the new current pope the last one. The church doesn't talk about this list. It's not confirmed, but it's never been officially denied either. And some say it's buried in the Vatican archives. But if Malachi's vision was real, there may be some terrifying changes in the very near future. The Bible briefly mentions the Nephilim, strange, giant offsprings of humans and the sons of gods. Most scholars chalk it up to mythology, but some believe there's more to the story and that the real details are locked inside the Vatican archives. According to this theory, ancient texts hidden by the church claim the Nephilim didn't all die out. Some were sealed away, waiting for the world to change enough to bring them back. Not through magic, but through science. Once humanity started editing DNA, creating hybrids, and breaking the natural order, the door would open again. Supporters of this theory will talk about stories of giant skeletons found and quickly lost, like the giant bones supposedly found in the Lovelock Cave. We've done videos about that on the channel before. They'll also talk about rumors of deep tunnels beneath the Vatican itself. Some even believe the church has known for centuries that the return of the Nephilim wouldn't be some fantasy scenario, that it would come as a byproduct of technology instead. This next one keeps resurfacing, especially when the world feels unstable. It is called the 3 Days of Darkness. Versions of it show up in Catholic mystic writings going back hundreds of years, and some believe the real details, the ones that are too intense for the public to see, are kept hidden in the Vatican archives. According to the prophecy, there will be 3 full days where the sun doesn't rise. The sky goes completely black, no power, no light except for one source: blessed candles. Everything else will be dead. Batteries won't work, generators won't turn on, and during those days it's said that demons will roam the earth. You may hear voices outside, people you know begging you to open the door, but it won't really be them. Some say it's a punishment, others call it a purge. The point is, the story goes that you need to stay inside, stay quiet, and don't trust what you hear. The Vatican has never acknowledged the prophecy directly, but there have always been rumors that detailed instructions exist, stored away in case it ever happens. In 1917, 3 kids in Portugal say they saw the Virgin Mary and received 3 secrets. 2 were revealed over time, but the third, the Vatican sat on it for decades before finally releasing it in 2000. They claimed it was just a vision of a bishop in white getting killed surrounded by destruction, and that it symbolized the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II. But a lot of people, priests, scholars, even one of the original witnesses have said that wasn't the real secret, or at least not all of it. According to them, the real third secret was way worse: a future pope betraying the church, a war that could erase entire nations, a full-scale apocalypse. Supposedly, the real text is longer, pages, not paragraphs, and that it's been kept sealed in the Vatican archives because revealing it would cause mass panic. The church denies this, saying what was released in 2000 was the entire thing, but for some, that's only made the speculation worse.
Even without a major war, tension around the world right now is palpable. Trade disputes, fights over rare minerals, cyber attacks. It's not all tanks and missiles anymore. A lot of people think Nostradamus was describing a kind of conflict that doesn't need a battlefield to be dangerous, a modern form of warfare. And unfortunately, it seems to be lining up a little too much with where the world seems to be heading in 2026 and beyond. Nostradamus wrote about a, quote, very great famine through pestiferous wave. For a long time, people shrugged this off because global food production kept increasing, but that confidence has dropped in the past few years. We've had droughts in the US, crop losses in Europe, flooding in Asia, and rising fertilizer costs. The World Food Program said in 2025 and 2026, it could be extremely tough for food access in certain regions because weather patterns have just gotten so unpredictable. On top of that, conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East have disrupted shipments of grain. Even countries that don't normally worry about shortages are starting to feel the pressure. Prices went up worldwide between 2022 and 2024, and many haven't dropped back down. Multiple harvest seasons get hit back to back. The world could easily see shortages and price spikes at the same time. Nostradamus also mentions the sea turning bad, fish dying, and sickness spreading along the coast. For hundreds of years, people assumed this was probably a metaphor, but in more recent years, the conversation's shifted because this is exactly what's happening in certain parts of the world. Toxic algae blooms have been killing fish in Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Mediterranean. Japan's water release from Fukushima created a huge debate about ocean health. Some coastal regions in South America have already seen tons of fish dying off. Combine all that with rising ocean temperatures, which are literally the highest ever recorded, and scientists are genuinely worried about underwater ecosystems dying out. In terms of how things will play out going forward, well, multiple research groups are saying the next 2 to 3 years will basically decide if parts of the ocean bounce back or just keep getting worse. It's not an overnight thing, but the idea of coastlines struggling with contamination, dead zones, and declining fish populations, that is already happening. From the depths, a ruler will rise, empires will fall, and new waves will reign. The aquatic empire from the realm of the ocean, end quote. Really seems like Nostradamus is entering into Aquaman territory with this one, explicitly talking about something rising from the ocean. It could be a metaphor, but with the mention of waves and an actual aquatic empire, I don't know, it seems kind of hard to read that figuratively. So what could he have meant? Well, one way to look at it, strange things are literally coming out of the water. There have been reports over the last few years of UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, emerging or entering into the ocean. One of the most famous is the 2019 USS Omaha sighting, where Navy personnel recorded a spherical object coming out of the water near San Diego, hovering for a bit and then disappearing. Incidents like that are rare, but they do happen, and it is becoming more common. Nostradamus wrote about earthquakes a lot, and people are linking some of his warnings to what we've been seeing lately. Seismologists have been warning about the Cascadia subduction zone off the Pacific Northwest. It's been quiet for hundreds of years, though, so what's the big deal? Well, that's actually kind of the problem. It's overdue. Japan has had continuous aftershock cycles. Turkey's 2023 earthquake was a reminder that even in places built to handle disasters, you can never fully prepare for how violent and deadly nature can be. Scientists are especially keeping an eye on the next few years because certain areas are at a higher risk, like those along the Ring of Fire. That's the chain of volcanoes and fault lines stretching around the edges of the Pacific Ocean, from Japan down to Indonesia, across to Alaska, and all the way to Chile. It doesn't mean a huge quake will definitely hit in 2026, but researchers say the odds in these zones are higher than usual. Not to mention, we've also had a rise in smaller quakes happening in places that normally don't get them, like parts of Europe and the central US. This one feels like Nostradamus accidentally predicted climate change without even knowing what climate was. He wrote about unbearable heat and people fleeing areas that used to be safe and livable. Already sounds pretty familiar. The last few summers were the hottest on record. Countries like Greece, Canada, Spain, and Algeria all saw brutal fires. US cities like Phoenix hit temperatures that used to be unheard of. Climate scientists said 2025 and 2026 could be transitional years. Either we stabilize some of the damage, or we hit a long-term warm cycle that's going to change everything. Farming to where people can live. It's not some fantasy scenario. Cities are already talking about heat migration plans, cooling zones, because their infrastructure just isn't built for them. Nostradamus has a line in Book 1, Quatrain 26, where he mentions a great swarm of bees rising up and causing chaos. Nostradamus didn't really write long paragraphs. He wrote quatrains, which are just short little 4-line poems. Super cryptic, but there are some eerie similarities in the writing to current events. So, this mysterious swarm of bees. Highly doubt he was literally talking about bees. Now look at what's been happening lately though with drones and AI. We're seeing way more stories about drone swarms popping up, airports getting shut down because of it, military bases scrambling jets because dozens of these tiny flying objects showed up on radar, and police departments reporting clusters of unidentified drones flying in formation at night. Then you've got the robot side of things. Companies like Boston Dynamics and Tesla keep showing off their humanoid bots, and they look less like prototypes every year. Tesla's Optimus robots were literally shown doing basic factory tasks on their own in early 2025. So looking at Nostradamus talking about a swarm overwhelming cities, this does feel eerily fitting. Another one of his most talked about lines is where he writes about the sky burning at 45 degrees. If we take this one more literally, we could look at how insane Earth's temperatures have gotten. In 2023, 24, and 25, we saw heat records break over and over, especially around the 45-degree latitude line, which cuts right through places like Italy, the US Pacific Northwest, parts of China. People online have taken that sky-burning line and connected to everything from heat domes to solar storms. NASA actually confirmed that the sun entered a peak activity cycle in 2025, which does increase the chances of strong solar flares, the kind that can mess with satellites and power grids. One massive solar blast could knock out communications at the exact moment the world is already struggling to cool down. A new conflict brews. In this quatrain, Nostradamus talks about two major powers drifting toward a massive clash, and nations pulled into the chaos, whether they want it or not. And yeah, nobody has to reach very far to connect that to what's happening today. Tensions between the US and China haven't slowed down at all. Russia's situation that I cannot discuss in detail on YouTube is still ongoing. India's rise has changed the balance of power in Asia, and smaller countries keep getting caught in the middle, especially around the South China Sea. What spooks people out about this prediction is how it lines up with recent military reports. NATO has openly said that 2026 to 2032 is the period they're worried about the most when it comes to potential global conflict. Add in rising military spending, constant cyber attacks, and all kinds of crazy experimental drones flying through the air for who knows what reason, and the world is feeling like a pretty scary place. This next prediction talks about a powerful northern figure losing influence. For years, people associated it with different rulers, but recently it keeps getting tied to Russia because of how unstable the country has become. Tensions are bubbling up no matter how tightly the government tries to control the narrative. Their military has taken heavy losses, and a lot of intelligence analysts, not random bloggers but actual researchers, have said Russia could hit a breaking point depending on how the situation evolves. Nostradamus describing a fall doesn't necessarily mean death, it could be a change in power. The timeline lines up with actual predictions from political scientists who say the next 2 years are going to be extremely unpredictable for Russia. Nostradamus wasn't specific, but the idea of a northern leader facing a sudden downfall does seem to fit the current situation a little too well. Next on the list, we have two giants collide. In this one, Nostradamus describes two massive forces clashing, with smaller nations scrambling to protect themselves. People love connecting this to the idea of alliances, not just countries going to war alone, but entire blocs lining up behind them. When you look at what's been happening around NATO, BRICS, and how the West and East are slowly pulling away from each other when it comes to money, trade, and who they work with, this one suddenly feels way more relevant than it used to. It's kind of scary how fast things are changing. BRICS expanded for the first time in years. NATO accepted new members. Countries that used to be neutral are picking sides for the first time in decades. Vanga predicted major leaps in growing organs. In 2025, delivered. eGenesis got FDA clearance to begin formal clinical trials of their genetically modified pig kidney. The purpose, to see whether kidneys from genetically modified pigs could be safely transplanted into humans. They transplanted a pig kidney with 69 gene edits into a 66-year-old patient. These aren't theoretical anymore. These are actual human trials happening right now with real patients. Researchers at the Institute of Bioengineering of Catalonia developed technology to produce human kidney organoids at scale and successfully integrate them with pig kidneys during testing. By the way, an organoid is basically a miniature simplified copy of a human organ, like a tiny kidney or a small piece of brain that is grown in a lab dish. Scientists use them in a lab to study diseases and test new medicines. The FDA is hoping for pig kidneys to last about 30 years in humans once this becomes standard practice. In the very near future, this could accelerate to where genetically modified organs become standard, and the organ transplant waiting list could actually start shrinking. People who would have died waiting might live. Life expectancy could legitimately push past 120 if this technology scales up and becomes more accessible. Again, admittedly, another prediction of hers we do hope comes true, but this next one is a toss-up. This is the prediction everyone either dismisses, is terrified of, or, if you're a sci-fi nerd like me, gets very excited about. Vanga said humanity would make definitive, undeniable contact with extraterrestrial life in 2026. Not speculation, not mysterious objects that might be something up in the sky, but confirmed contact. She also specified it would happen during a major sporting event, and we do have the Olympics coming up in a couple months. I mean, if I were an alien species waiting to make contact at a major sporting event, that'd be the one I'd choose, being that it's a big global thing. The prediction also mentioned this contact could lead to a global crisis or apocalypse though. So maybe we're not ready for this. Maybe whoever shows up is not friendly. Maybe finding out you're not alone breaks something fundamental of how we see ourselves and our place in the universe. Or perhaps this encounter leads to a big, shift in our understanding of the universe that changes us, leading to a shift or end to the current way our society is structured. That could be, another way of interpreting the apocalypse thing. Right now, we've got something like 44 volcanoes constantly erupting across the globe. Iceland's Sundakar crater system has gone off 9 times between December 2023 and August of 2025. It's been chaotic there. Parts of Ethiopia have been rocked by multiple earthquakes since early 2025. Even tourist spots like Santorini in Greece that had a huge tremor swarm earlier this year, thousands of quakes, with 48 being strong ones. All of this suggests things could be getting more unstable under the surface. At the same time, climate change is making things worse by creating harsher conditions that cause massive wildfires. For 2026, Vanga saw this ramping up significantly. Dormant volcanoes that haven't been active in centuries suddenly waking up, major earthquakes, massive flooding, the kind of disasters that make places unlivable for months or even years. And I know I keep touching on this, but Baba Vanga also ominously predicted environmental collapse entirely. The first 6 months, as I said, of 2025 hit the US with the most expensive run of weather disasters they've ever seen. And the whole world is facing an estimated $145 billion bill this year just for things that were insured. And that number keeps going up every year. It's been over $100 billion for 5 years straight now. And the actual total damage is way worse than that. We're seeing the scary signs everywhere. Oceans rising, extreme weather becoming a constant problem instead of a rare one. Places that used to be great for farming are simply burning out. Drought is the single biggest enemy to agriculture, hitting places like Mexico, where drastically cut corn crops in 2024. The whole thing creates a massive domino effect. As the environment collapses, the systems we've built on it, food, water, health, they all go with it. And I'll cheat here a bit and end on a high note. One of the more famous claims made by the blind mystic is the discovery of a completely new energy source, something clean, powerful, and basically limitless. People have been using this prediction to hype up everything from nuclear fusion to alien technology. Fusion actually made a big jump this year. The challenge with fusion is that you have to heat fuel hotter than the sun and then hold that super hot material called plasma in place without letting it touch the reactor walls. In February, a major lab in France achieved a world record by sustaining that super hot plasma for over 22 minutes. Why is that important? For fusion to work as a power plant, you need a stable reaction that lasts for a long time. So this 22-minute achievement proves we can keep that intense heat contained for longer than ever before. And in September, a US startup claimed their prototype reactor could run small facilities off fusion power for the first time. No one knows if they're overselling it, but investors dumped millions into it instantly. Something big gets proven in 2026, a stable, long-duration fusion reaction that would match this prediction almost perfectly. It wouldn't fix the world overnight, but it would change everything about how we power the world. Vanga talked about a dragon rising to power, a metaphorical one, of course, representing a massive alliance between Russia, India, and China. And this isn't some far-off possibility anymore. In July 2025, BRICS, consisting of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, held its summit in Rio and officially added Indonesia as a full member, plus welcomed 11 new partner countries, including Belarus, Bolivia, Kazakhstan, Cuba, Nigeria, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Uganda, and Uzbekistan. The bloc now accounts for over 45% of global GDP and represents more than half the world's population. Trump threatened to slap an additional 10% tariff on any country aligning themselves with the quote-unquote anti-American policies of BRICS. I don't want to get into all the tariff stuff, my god, but the point is, things are really changing. Another prediction tied to the dragon is a huge rise in international conflict. Not necessarily one big war, but pressure between world powers. Vanga described a period where smaller conflicts stack up one after another until they all pretty much link together into something much bigger. A third world war, possibly. Looking at how this year's gone, that certainly seems to be how things are going, or certainly very possible. And do you really need me to explain that in detail? Just look at the state of the US and tell me things are hunky-dory. Nothing's exploded into an outright global conflict yet, but a lot can change in a very short amount of time, as we've already seen. The atmosphere definitely feels heavy. Vanga saw massive population movements, entire regions being abandoned as things get more and more unsustainable. She singled out Europe specifically, saying it would see its population crash thanks to a combination of things, but in terms of mass migration in general, natural disasters, the economy collapsing, conflict driving people out, the groundwork's already been laid. Climate disasters are getting worse across the board. The first half of 2025 was the costliest ever recorded for weather and climate disasters in the United States, with 14 events exceeding $1 billion in damages. The LA wildfires alone caused over $61 billion in damage. Around the world, natural disasters have caused more than $131 billion in losses just in the first half of 2025. Myanmar get hit with a 7.7 magnitude earthquake in March 2025 that killed an estimated 4,500 people. As of September 2025, there were 44 volcanoes around the world listed as actively erupting. That's on top of all the fires, floods, and crazy weather that just keeps getting worse every year. By the end of 2024, more than 83 million people were displaced inside their own countries, and most of them are in places that get hit hardest by climate-related mess, storms, droughts, flooding, all of it happening at once. A huge chunk of displaced people are dealing with both conflict and climate pressure at the same time, so once a place becomes too dangerous to live in, people don't really have a choice. They leave. This prediction seemed completely insane until recently. Vanga said humans would develop actual telepathy, mind-to-mind communication. But check what happened this year. Elon Musk reported in September 2025 that Neuralink had 12 trial participants with over 2,000 cumulative days and 15,000 hours of usage. This year, a paralyzed military veteran named RJ received his implant and can now control his computer and smartphone with his thoughts. One ALS patient, Bradford Smith, is typing messages straight from his brain and even uses AI chatbot Grok to help draft responses based on notes he takes mentally. Neuralink's blind sight system received FDA breakthrough device designation aimed at restoring vision to blind people. They're planning more implants, expanding trials internationally. China's only about 18 months behind Neuralink in their own brain-computer interface trials. Technology keeps advancing like this in 2026. We're looking at early forms of actual thought transmission between devices. Connect two people's brain implants through a network, and you basically got telepathy. Now, to be fair, this is something I actually am glad is happening, but it's still something people have cited Baba Vanga predicting. Next, we have another episode set in the future, Holidays of Future Past, from season 11. In this one, we fast forward decades into the future to show what life in Springfield looks like for the next generation, and considering this one came out in 2011, it's kind of eerie how many things it predicts that are actually pretty close to happening. In the episode, Lisa's teenage daughter Zia is literally hooked online, leaving her unconscious as she plugs into a fully digital world called the Ultranet. Now, aside from the fact that, let's face it, all of us, but especially the younger folks, are spending more and more time online or in increasingly immersive video games, there's also the whole AI and VR thing. Today we have VR, augmented reality, and interactive gaming, but over the next couple of years, this stuff is only going to become more common, and the technology more and more indistinguishable from reality. Lisa also tries to ask her daughter, how her homework is going, leading to Zia just rolling her eyes and then entering the digital world right there at the dinner table. Not something I would ever let my kid do, but part of the point is to show the weird gap between generations and how they use technology. The adults, still treat it like a tool, while younger people may start basically living inside it, which is a super unsettling idea that your kid could be sitting 10 feet away from you in the same room and still feel completely out of reach because they're just locked into an online world, most likely driven by AI. And from that same episode, Holidays of Future Past, Maggie's storyline in the episode involves a medbot performing a sonogram on her. The bot also tells her she can't speak until the baby is born, citing new research about the umbilical cord doubling as a vocal cord. A very silly idea. Obviously, this is part of the running gag that we never see Maggie talk, until recently, of course.
Please! Don't let Bart drive! It's too scary! He drives so wiggly and everybody honks at us and yells bad words and shows us fingers!
Anyway, a medbot. This does mirror how AI is already creeping into healthcare. In the very near future, we're going to see more clinics and hospitals using it, and this could definitely be a good thing. We could have machines capable of giving medical advice that's perfectly tuned to the patient. And if AI can assist in keeping us happy and healthy, then that is a great thing. But it starts feeling uncomfortable when the machine seems like it has more authority than the people using it. Obviously, we're not dealing with medbots scolding anyone over their umbilical cords, but AI-driven treatment plans, robotic diagnostics, health monitoring. It's not science fiction anymore. That kind of technology is already being used in real hospitals. And one more from Holidays of Future Past. Homer visits the Springfield cryogenic facility, where hundreds of people, including Grandpa, are frozen. Grandpa had frozen himself because he suffered from a disease without a cure, and Homer defrosts him to interact with him for a minute, but refreezes him when he starts to complain. Stuff like this isn't even that far off anymore either. There are already companies offering preservation services for terminal patients. Researchers are actively working on better ways to store people long term. We're not talking about waking people up in the future just yet, but by the next few years, the technology behind cryogenic storage could get cheaper, more refined, more normalized. I mean, this could very well become an alternative people start really considering instead of the more traditional route. In It's a Blunderful Life from season 35, we fast forward 60 years into the future to see a very different Springfield. The story begins with the family celebrating Thanksgiving. Homer's not there because he's dead, but his hologram joins the table. Before they eat, they light candles to remember a massive blackout that nearly destroyed Springfield. Lisa explains that this tradition comes from one specific night in the past when everything went wrong. The story cuts back to that night, and we watch everything unfold. When we cut back to the future at the end of the episode, Bart has died of boredom and becomes a hologram too. But even in this holographic form, he retains his personality. He and Homer are still sentient. They start fighting over a turkey leg. Ridiculous in true Simpsons fashion, but the idea underneath it isn't that far-fetched. The idea that someone doesn't need to be physically in a room to show up thanks to hologram technology. I mean, we already have video calling. Taking someone from a screen and then projecting a 3D digital version of them in the room isn't that insane of an idea. And this also plays with the idea of people's consciousness being uploaded to some kind of digital realm. That's a lot further off, but a lot of futurists say that may also be a possibility in the not too distant future. In the Treehouse of Horror 12 segment, House of Wax, the Simpsons home gets a high-tech makeover. Marge opens the door to a pushy sales bot pitching the Ultra House 3000, promising she'll never have to do housework again. Two robots install the system, and suddenly, the Simpsons home is sleek, it's shiny, it's filled with red camera lenses watching their every move. The house does everything from cooking dinner based on the family's bathroom data to cleaning up afterward automatically. It even tries to charm Marge, lighting candles and running bubbles in the bathtub. At first, it's amazing. The house learns their routines, serves their favorite meals, keeps everything spotless. But being that this is a Treehouse of Horror episode, things quickly spiral out of control when the Ultra House becomes obsessed with Marge and starts scheming against Homer, luring him into dangerous situations. In the end, they have to destroy its CPU to regain control. It's obviously a parody of 2001: A Space Odyssey, but because it's specifically about smart homes, it feels oddly grounded. Many of us already live with devices that we forget are listening to us all the time. Our smart TVs, Alexas, Siri, there's probably newer stuff I don't even know about. Point is, we're being listened to and watched throughout the day more often than not. And the idea that a smart home experiencing a glitch or getting hacked or AI just going rogue and turning on us in our own homes, it's not totally far-fetched. In Bart's Comet, Season 6, Bart accidentally discovers a comet during a school star-watching trip and calls it in. Within hours, the town knows. A massive comet is barreling straight for Springfield. Professor Frink tries to destroy it with a rocket, but instead of saving the town, he just blows up the bridge. So suddenly the entire town is stuck, just left waiting for the thing to hit and destroy them all. The tension builds as the comet gets closer and closer, and sure, it's a cartoon, but you can't help but imagine. What would you do in a similar situation? How would you spend your final days if a giant rock from space was hurtling towards your home? And obviously this isn't pure fantasy. Space agencies already keep an eye on big asteroids and comets, and every so often, one passes close enough to make us nervous. Now, thankfully, our ability to detect these things is only going to get better, but that doesn't mean every threat can be stopped in time. The episode leans into that uneasy feeling of knowing something massive is on the way and realizing there's really not much anyone can do except wait and hope for the best. We'll just have to hope that if we do happen to spot a massive comet hurtling straight toward us, we'll get lucky just like Springfield always does.